Yeah, that's it. Hey, y'all. Chris Birch here, entrepreneur strategy, sitting in close confinement at home in Washington, D.C. I wanted to share with you guys some of the people that I've come across in my career in printing, in promotions, in music, and everything. And today we are joined by none other than Mr. Malachi. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So what I like to do on my channel is bring on other people that are not just entrepreneurs or looking to become an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had spoke at some point last week, and it was on the onset of this international pandemic that we're now being stuck in our homes in a sense.
Yep.
And we were just discussing, certain things that we could do or share information that we could share with each other on what do we really plan on doing? What is going to be the hindrance on our own individual businesses?
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into, I guess, the pandemic and the stuff that we had talked about, I wanted to kind of introduce you to my followers and kind of explain maybe where you started from. I mean, now obviously in a successful career in the music industry still, but where were the roots of that? I remember meeting you, I don't know, late 90s. You were playing guitar. Is that your start with guitar?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 6 years old, playing classical guitar. And then I sort of morphed into playing in like punk rock bands. And then when I was 15, I ended up somehow joining a go-go band, in which I was sort of familiar with go-go, but I wasn't like a big fan at the time. And until I played my first show and went to one, and I was like, okay, sign me up for this. I'm all in. So then I sort of was one of the more responsible people in the band, and I had a car. So I had a 1975 Dodge Dart that my father bought me for $500 that I was so disappointed in at the time because I wanted a fancy red sports car. But I wish I had it. I tried to find another one maybe 10 years ago, and I couldn't find one for less than like $20,000. So anyway, so that just sort of morphed over time into management. I went away to school in Montana, where my father was a professor, because that was the only place I could afford to go to college. And started getting into concert promotion on the concert. A lot of people in our industry were on their, the concerts, college concert board or whatever. So I did that. I was on the college radio station, which was also like a public radio station as well. And so just kind of got my feet wet doing that. And so I mean, I can.
Are you? And I never asked you this. Are you originally from the DC area?
I'm from Annapolis, actually. I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first go-go band was in Annapolis, and I used to.
Who was that?
They were called Occupation. Actually, there's quite a few people in significant bands that came from that band. So keyboard Chris, who was the keyboard player, who plays for Northeast Groovers, and played for Mambo Sauce. He also played for Aftermath, I think, and somebody else, I forget, but he's also, pretty much played with almost everybody. Michael Arnold, that plays keyboards for Team Familiar. It has been with them all the way since they were Familiar Faces. General Lee, who was the rapper that took over for Rapper when he left Northeast Groovers. It was fairly short-lived, but he came from there. I'm trying to think who else. DB and Lime Green, that are the lead talker and rapper from Project 360. So all of them came from Occupation. And actually also the guy named Teo, his real name's Antoine, but he goes by Teo. He was the new guy in Drew Hill until they just did like a whole new thing more recently, and he's been playing with Team Familiar, or Still Familiar recently. I don't know if he's actually a member or not, or just featuring or whatever. But yeah, so all of those people all came from Occupation, and I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out as well.
Yeah, I remember that. So there was a hall in Annapolis. It was like a gym or a VFW or something that the bands used to play.
Stanton Center. Yep.
Stanton Center. Yep.
Yeah. I used to live down the street from there. So Buck, if everybody remembers the sound guy, Buck, he used to throw the shows down there. And I would pass out flyers for him in high school, and he would let me in free. And so I would walk down there. I lived maybe 6 or 7 blocks from there, and I would just walk down there every week if I wasn't, if my band wasn't playing. So all the bands came down, Hucklebucks, Southeast Sounds, Junkyard was down there a lot. We played with Junkyard a lot. I don't know. There's about a million other bands, all of the sort of B-level bands, in addition to some of the A-level. Backyard didn't come down that I remember, and Northeast Groovers didn't come until later. But yeah, funny enough, my wife's aunt was the lady that sort of ran that place. But obviously, we weren't married at the time. But yeah,
wow.
So yeah, I was there quite a bit.
What year was that? What was that like? Is that late 90s?
No, early 90s. So I started playing in Occupation in 92. Graduated in 94. So yeah, it was probably like 92 to 96 maybe, and then it just started getting crazy. Like they just had, like major. It was just like a war zone. Yeah. I mean, I was there a couple of times when, shit really hit the fan, and it was a bad situation. Yeah. So,
and you said that you live not far down the street. I have this perception of going there, and I feel like it was like in between public housing. Am I wrong, or is it something similar?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's in what they call Fourth Ward, or they call it in town. So I mean, they don't call it Fourth Ward; it is the Fourth Ward of Annapolis, but people call it in town as well. One of those two things. So no, it's definitely. I mean, my wife's father lives down there. A lot of my friends live down there. No, it's definitely. I mean, that's the thing about Annapolis that people don't really understand. Like, if you just casually drive through Annapolis, you just think it's this lily white sort of tourist town with, a bunch of sailors and marinas and stuff. But there's about 6 or 7. I remember jumping ahead in the story a little bit, but I used to, prior to managing the clothing line Aja Amani, I used to sell their stuff. Basically what I would do, I would get a box full of clothes on consignment from Marlon and Aja Amani, and I had my box full of Northeast Groovers tapes, and I would literally drive through all the hoods and sell them. And at one time I was stopping doing that, and I don't remember why, but Digda from Northeast Groovers, who's a really good friend of mine, lived in Annapolis at the time as well, because his wife was from there. Okay. And he was going to take over doing the clothes, the Aja Amani stuff. And I was driving him through all the places, and he was like, I never knew any of this. He was like, this shit is like Southeast. Like, I didn't even know it was here. And so I mean, there's definitely a lot of hoods in Annapolis, but you just wouldn't know because they hide them really well. You can't just drive through them by accident. You have to sort of.
Yeah, I mean, for me growing up in D.C., Annapolis to me, by the public perception, is the naval base. Or not naval base, but the
academy. Yeah. Well, the base is right across. There's a naval academy and the naval base. Naval Academy is actually in Annapolis. The naval base is across the bridge, right across the bridge. Yeah.
Correct. But if you were to Google it and look up Annapolis features, you would see, beautiful trees and parks and waterfront and the academy. And I think like every urban or even suburban environment, they're the outer sectors,
Yep.
And people don't even realize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got me thinking. You mentioned Marlon and Aja Amani. What was his character? He had a little character that he put on.
Bogey, the little bear.
Bogey. Yep.
Yeah. Bogey the bear.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I saw Marlon maybe 2 years ago, and he was starting to redo some stuff. Like yeah. No.
Yeah, he posts some stuff on Facebook and stuff every now and again. I haven't talked to him in a while, but
Okay.
yeah, he's still making stuff. So that's good.
All right. So let's go back to Montana,
Mm-hmm.
going to college.
Yeah, so I went twice actually. So I went to straight out of high school. I graduated when I was 17. I went straight to Montana for my first year of college, and I was a classical guitar major. And I absolutely hated Montana because it was, even though the town where I was at, which is Bozeman, it's sort of the same situation as Annapolis, where people think Montana, they just think you're out there with like a bunch of cows and deer and stuff. And to a certain extent you are, but actually the town where I was in, Bozeman, was actually a pretty progressive town. They had there were a lot of really good musicians there, my little brother being one of them still. And there was a lot. It wasn't as much going on there then as there is now, but it was still sort of hipper than I would have thought it would be. However, not Montana, or at least Bozeman, is like 3 feet of snow about 9 months out of the year, and the temperature can get to like 30 below zero, and there's no music industry there really. I mean, there's local bands and stuff, but I always knew that I wanted to be in the greater music industry. So I came back home after the first year, and I went to Morgan State because a friend of mine convinced me that their music program there was good. It really was. Their choir department was really good, but the rest of the music department wasn't very good. I was still a classical guitar major. And then I sort of dropped out. I don't remember exactly why. I mean, I know I was still playing with Occupation at the time, or I had started playing with Occupation again at the time. I sort of dropped out, and then for a while, and then I went on a trip to Mexico with my father is an architecture professor, and so they did a joint trip to Mexico. He used to teach at University of Maryland, which is why we lived in Maryland. So he did a joint trip with the students from University of Maryland and from Montana State, and thankfully enough, there was enough money to take some of the family. So we went on this trip that was really a work trip, but we turned it into a vacation. And like one of the guys there was like a writer for Time magazine. And basically I just was like around these really smart people. And I was just like, what am I doing with my life? I need to go back to college. So I went back to Montana again to school, and originally, or I wanted to go to the University of Miami because they were one of the first schools that sort of had a music business program, but it was like $30,000 a year, and we couldn't, we didn't have that kind of money and couldn't get it. And so my father was like, well, you could, combine a business degree and a music. So basically I was a marketing major and a music theory and composition minor, which although that sounds good, does not make a music business degree. So then I changed my major to film because that's where all the entertainment people were, and then realized I just didn't have any interest in film either. So then I decided to come back to Maryland again, or to Maryland DMV again, and that's when I started playing with Northeast Groovers.
Okay, so that was what, 90?
That was 2000. It was 2000. It was so end of 99, beginning of 2000, I think, if my memory is right.
Okay.
And I could be wrong because somebody posted something about the What Band the other day, and they were like, well, when did you play in the What Band? I was like, I think 2002, 2003. And then Do 7 was like, no, it was like 2005. I was like, oh, I was totally off. So forgive me if my dates are wrong, but I do remember, I think the first CD that I was on for Northeast Groovers was maybe like July 2000 or something like that. And I had been there for probably 6 months or so before that happened. So it was end of 99, beginning of 2000. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, as we were talking the other day, unfortunately, you're in an industry, like a lot of industries, that are going to be adversely affected.
We already am.
Okay, so I actually have on my notes here, I pulled up your roster on your website, and it was canceled, postponed, canceled. I mean, the whole roster.
Everything from the second week of March all the way through. I just had the Melbourne International Jazz Festival on June 5th cancel on me. So much everything, second half of March, all of April, probably all of May, and all the way shooting into June by now.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So take me and our viewers from playing with a local go-go band to now you're in LA. How long have you been there? And I'm gonna change our graphic there. I'll show that is one of the things that you've started.
I like it, man. I like it.
I try to prepare.
I can dig it. Okay. Oh, but you left out an L though, just so you know. It's L. Yeah, LLIVE. Yeah, it's all good, just for the viewers. Okay, so played with Northeast Groovers for a couple of years. We turned into solo to sort of capitalize on the grown and sexy thing. I got tired of playing cover songs. So there you go, my man. Thank you. So I moved to Las Vegas with a friend of mine from college in Montana. He wanted to start a film and music company. That kind of petered out after a little while, and I got a job as the promotions director at a radio station out there. I don't drink, I don't gamble, I don't smoke, I don't use any drugs, I don't buy prostitutes. So Vegas was not exactly the place for me. And so I came to a seminar on how to start your own record label in Los Angeles while I was still living in Vegas, because it's only a few hours away. I stayed with my great aunt who lived in Pasadena, just outside of LA. And I just fell in love with the place immediately. And so I was like, I need to come here. And there was a record that we were playing on our radio station in Vegas from an artist that was on Universal Records. And I had sort of become friends with the guy who owned her production company. And he didn't really offer me a job, but I basically helped him for free. Essentially is what it was, for free, and the experience. So I loved LA, but after a while, it just became apparent. It was at the time another sort of economic disaster right before they recalled the governor, and Arnold Schwarzenegger came in, because it was the worst job market in America. Like, I hadn't, throughout all this time, my very first job was making pizzas in Annapolis, and I had gone back every now and again when I needed a little extra money to deliver pizzas or whatever. And I couldn't even get a job in LA at Papa John's delivering pizzas after having been a director of promotions at a radio station in Vegas. So it was really, really bad. I was doing temp jobs and stuff. And at that point, I decided, okay, I want to, this is when I started coming up with the concept for Mambo Sauce. I wanted to create a go-go band that played all their own music, and basically became a national artist. Oh, wow.
Your website, just to kind of give people an idea.
Sure. Nice. So I really started thinking about that. I tried to find some people in LA that knew about go-go, but I was trying to create more of a current, MTV was still a thing at the time. And I was trying to create an artist that could, have a video that looks like the one you're looking at right now. And everybody that I was hearing back from was talking about go-go from the 80s. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I mean. So that prompted me to come back to the DMV again and start putting together Mambo Sauce. By that time I was kind of over playing guitar. I didn't want to play anymore. But Drew, if you know Drew, white boy Drew, that used to manage the What Band, he's Papa's friend. He kind of pressed me out to come play for the What Band, and that's the one and only time I've been a hired gun. I'm not a huge fan of that that methodology in go-go, but at the time I was like, hey, I have a part-time job, and I in order, if you want me to play, like, I have to replace that income because I need it. So I need to be paid. I mean, it wasn't a lot, like $50 a night or something like that, I think. But interestingly, my full-time job at the time, which was not something that I really wanted to do, it was just something to pay the bills, was as an inside salesperson at Coca-Cola Enterprises in Annapolis. That will sort of play into the story a little bit later. And it's just funny how things happen that you don't pay attention to at the time and that come back later on in life. So this whole time I'm putting Mambo Sauce together. At one point, I just step out on faith, and I'm like, I'm quitting my job at Coca-Cola so that I can focus on Mambo Sauce, because I can't do it at the time. I started Mambo Sauce, putting it together in 2003. People didn't really hear about Mambo Sauce really until 2007. So it was not a short process. But I quit my job there. And then I, ran out of money. So I applied for a job at WPGC. I got the job as the promotions coordinator at PGC, which was a couple steps below what I had done in Vegas. But, I had to do what I had to do. So anyway, created Mambo Sauce, basically put every single person in the band. And handpicked everyone. I produced all the records. That's me playing guitar on 90% of the entire album. Without trying to take all the credit, because it's not, obviously I didn't do it all by myself, but there was no real team. Like, I was booking the shows, I was doing the graphic design, I was, producing the records, I was overseeing the mixes. I was, when I would be at the studio 2 hours before the band got there and 3 hours after they left, blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
And I will, not to cut you off, I will mention for those people that are viewing, we have people jumping on and off. We are talking with Malachi, with a live agency, and Gobbo Takes. We're going to talk about that in a minute as well. We have people jumping on and off. So just so you know, Malachi is now currently in Los Angeles, trying to figure out what he's going to do with his entertainment career. I mean, you're in LA because of entertainment, right?
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. So,
what I was saying, you were talking about Mambo Sauce.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I have season tickets to DC United soccer team. My neighbor has season tickets to Washington Wizards.
Yep.
And I have a good friend who has season tickets to the Washington Nationals. And I'll tell you guys, not one of those teams does not play the Mambo Sauce Welcome to DC at an intro, during a monologue, or something. I mean, the record is profound. I mean, everyone's using it. Yeah. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So 2007 is when Miracles was sort of our first big hit. Now, for any music people that are watching, we had 3 or 4 songs that we had put out before that. All of the same quality, but Miracles was the first one to hit. So,
is there somewhere online or just like YouTube? Can they just search like
Miracles?
Miracles.
Yeah. We never did a video for Miracles, so the only video for Miracles is one that like somebody put together. I think it was actually if you remember Preston Scott from Vermont, he put it together. I think it was him. And then we actually ended up shooting the video for Welcome to DC, so there is a real video for that. But yeah, so Miracles hit, and then Welcome to DC, and both of them were in heavy rotation at the same time. So there was a groundswell of interest at that time. And at that time, some of the band members, without getting into too much detail, had some ego problems, should we say. And anyway, long story short, I ended up leaving just because they made it so difficult for me that I just was like, I can't do this anymore. So I started managing this kid named Nick Hakeem and managing this other kid named David Corey for a while. while I was managing David Corey, I ran out of money again. So again, how this plays into the situation later, I started working at this place called Heavy Hammer in Annapolis, which was basically we sold it. They have two websites, US HUD and I forget the other one, but basically it's a foreclosure website, and they list all the foreclosures in the country. And what we were doing was selling banner ads to mortgage brokers and real estate agents in different zip codes or counties across the country, all over the country. So essentially like a boiler room, like straight telemarketing, whatever.
Yep.
I didn't like it, but I learned a lot from it. And so that'll play into what became about, how a live agency came into being later. So anyway, and I just started, I don't remember when I started this, but I started promoting shows in Annapolis, bringing Black Alley and Secret Society and Faces, and all in one and All For You and all these different bands down to Annapolis. Ended up getting a job as the events and promotions manager at Maryland Live Casino prior to them opening. Was the events and promotions manager there until I moved over in 2013 to start running entertainment, which is when I started I guess it was a little later when I started bringing all the Gobbo bands up there on Tuesday nights.
Yep.
And then as the casino was growing, we knew we were going to build another new venue, which is what they have now, the big showroom. And MGM had just opened, and they said, or they opened with, or they were about to open, I don't remember, they were opening with Bruno Mars as their opener. And meanwhile,
the grand opening, yep.
Yeah, and I had been trying to book, different stuff, but they were like, no, book Foreigner and book Boyz II Men and book, all these old, great artists, but, I don't want to book Rick Springfield every day for the rest of my life, So I said, well, when we open this new venue and I become director, does that mean I can book, cooler shit? And they're like, no, you still book this stuff. So I was like, okay, that made my decision for me. All of that time, for the past few years, I have been trying to get my wife to consider moving to LA. She grew up in Annapolis. Her whole family's in the Annapolis area. She's very close with her family. It was not an easy thing. And then finally in August of 2015, I moved out here just to sort of get things set up. I stayed with my great aunt for a little while, and then I got a place. And then on New Year's Eve of 2015, 2016, my wife moved out here. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was managing Tabby Benet, if you know who that is, co-managing him. He's a good friend of mine as well. Yeah. Mambo Sauce was his band for a while, in the way that UCB was Wale's band. Mambo Sauce was Tabby's band when they were both kind of at the same level. And then I got a job. Basically, I just reached out to an agent that I had bought shows from before at the casino, and just to have coffee, and ended up going to work for this agency called the Empire Agency for about a year. And during that time, I mean, the guy that ran it was a great agent, but he wasn't the greatest business owner. Didn't really understand how to develop systems. And,
that sounds like an artist that needs a manager.
Yeah. So I just decided to sort of, to step out on my own and start my own agency. And that's what I did. And all my clients, decided to come with me. I gave them sort of the option of whether to stay with Empire or to come with me. And they all came with me. And, all of them but one are still with me now, and just been growing all the way up until 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, until the Thursday before last or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. So I flashed it there mistakenly. So then, was it been probably at least a year? I think you then launched another web platform. Uh,
Gobbo Takes, yeah. So that was April. So not quite a year.
almost a year. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So the way that came about was there were a few people who have other go-go websites who, I sort of, I'm not like a coding web designer, but I designed multiple website, probably, I don't know, 30 websites for different, you hear me?
Yeah.
For different artists and stuff, and then the live agency website you pulled up, I did that. I did the Gobbo Takes one. I've done sites. So other people asking me how to get more traffic, and I was always like, well, why don't you put the shows on your site? There's no real place for people to go to say, where does Junkyard play 3 Fridays from now, or you just have to go in a Facebook group and look through 7,000 flyers, most of which are probably look shitty,
Right.
and sort of find where somebody plays. So I was like, I was trying to advise other people to do this. I wasn't going to do it myself. But then after a while, nobody was doing it. So I just said, well, I might as well just do it myself then. So I created, it's funny, I created Gobbo Takes with the intention of giving bands and promoters a place to promote themselves, because one of the challenges that go-go bands have that some of my other touring artists don't have is they play in the same place every week, or they play 3 or 4 times a week, all within the same market. So it's difficult for them to promote, and promoters get frustrated because they're like, well, you're not posting a flyer to my show. But yeah, well, because your show's not till next Friday and I got to post this flyer that's tomorrow, whereas a band that's going on tour, they just put their whole tour up. Or, for example, I have a Prince tribute band that doesn't really tour, but they play almost every weekend, so they can sort of space it out. But go-go bands play so often in such a concentrated area that it makes that difficult. So my thought process was, I'm going to give you a place where you can have all of your shows listed, and you don't have to worry about, cluttering up your feed all of the time, and people will have an easy way to see where go-go bands are playing, and then also other artists that would appeal to people that like go-go. So I made 2 different tiers. There's a free tier, so any band can upload their shows for free, and that if you if you want to click on that, I mean the featured ones are at the top, but if you scroll down, you'll see the free listing. So if you just click on free listing, it just brings up a little form, and you just fill out your name and your email address, and you upload a flyer and for the show. And originally I had an entire form that people had to fill out with all the information, and I realized that was too much of an ask, to ask people to do all of that. So I made it easier, and so if you go, you got off of it. But anyway, if you there's 2 sections.
It was like it was freezing on me.
Oh, gotcha. So if you go to back to the home page, if you can pull it up.
Yep.
At the top where you were a few minutes ago, there are the pictures and stuff. But if you go down below that, there's like sort of the purple section where there are a bunch of shows listed that, you're on the listing form now. Yeah. So that's all you do to upload a show. You just put your name and information, email it, and then you just upload the flyer, and then it's in there, and then we put it up on the site. But is it still freezing up, or?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay, cool. So if you go back to the home page and you scroll down to, below where keep going down there where those purple ones. So that's the free listing. So you basically have the date, the name of the artist, the the venue, and that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? So that's the free listing. But if you go back up to the top, Where the premium listing is, you can, if you click on, I mean, they're all canceled now, but if you were to click on the get Gobbo Takes link, you would be taken to, for example, the Chuck Brown one at the Soundry, you would be taken to buy a ticket for that show.
Yeah.
So there are multiple purposes for this. One, to make it easier for Gobbo fans to find where their bands are playing, so the bands can sell more tickets, so the bands and the promoters can make more money, and also to present it in a way that's a little bit more, I would say, visually appealing, because my agenda through Mambo Sauce and through, I mean, I have an ulterior motive, which is I want to see more of the world exposed to go-go music. I love the fact that it's sort of like our hidden jewel to a certain extent, but I also want to see it on a higher level. And I understand that some people disagree with that and would rather have it stay in DC. And I think that there's a perfectly legitimate argument to be made that I think both can happen. I think bands can still play 3 nights a week in DC, and you can also have, the band that wants to play at Coachella. Like that's, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think you can do both of them. And so that's always sort of been my agenda.
Yeah.
But before I forget, because I alluded to those 2 jobs that I had doing the telephone sales stuff,
and
I didn't finish that story. The reason why I brought that up is because I never thought I was going to be an agent before. It wasn't even on my list of things that I was considering. But basically, that's what an agent is a salesperson. You're a salesperson, but you're selling bands, you're selling shows. And so the experience that I got working for Coca-Cola and the experience that I got working for, that real estate company really helped me and gave me the confidence to be able to cold calls. I mean, I wasn't cold calling for Coca-Cola. I had certain accounts where I would talk to the same people all the time. But for the other one, I was definitely cold calling, and it's like you're selling something that people don't want, and you have to be able to keep them on the phone. And it's really a skill. It's not an easy thing to do. And so that's a lot of what being an agent is. I mean, there's a lot more email now than phone calls, but phone calls are still a very important part of it. And I learned a lot of those skills from those 2 sales jobs that I really didn't want. I just got them as something to keep the lights on while I was doing my music thing.
Sure. So, and I'm sure, I mean, thinking about it like that is that aside from it just being like a sales pitch, it's also, if you're booking, as you've done, as you mentioned, when you're booking a venue, you got to be all over the place with different genres and knowing what's hot, whether the management company knows about it or the venue really knows about it. You have to, be on top of your P's and Q's to say, hey, I got a great act. He's not a Friday, Saturday act. He's not going to sell out the venue, but he's going to put 800 people in the seats on a Tuesday night.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that was my thing with the Gobbo bands at the casino. Was I know that people are going to come see them. Now, the casino has a different, I want to say value proposition, but that's not the term I'm looking for. They have a different, I guess, objective than your average venue. And that's something that I've explained to a lot of people, and that's very important. The casino doesn't care about ticket price. They don't care about cover charge. They don't care about alcohol. All of that money is peanuts. All they care about is, are people going to come gamble? That's it.
What are they going to do before and after that show?
Yep, absolutely. That's the only reason that they have had entertainment, is to draw people in to gamble. So that's it. So the reason that I started charging at the casino a cover charge was not because we needed to make money off that cover charge. That was peanuts. It was because certain bands like Black Alley, maybe Belladonna, I don't remember who the excuse me, who the other bands were, but there were certain bands that were bringing too many people, and so we needed to cut the amount down. So that's why
you were doing it free at first. Yeah,
we were doing it free. Yeah, and most of the bands were still free. Almost all. There were only about 5 or 6 bands that we were charging for, and that was only to cut down on the amount of people, because what happens is it starts getting overflowed, and I remember the first time I had Team Familiar in there, I was already moving to California, but I had booked them before I left, and I still was working remotely for the casino for a few months after I left. I got angry phone calls from the management like, hey man, people are just out here sitting on the chairs on the slot machines to watch this show, and they're not playing, and we can't have that. So we got to charge for them next time. So they weren't. So the bands the bands and the manager of the bands are like, oh man, we brought all these people, it was cranking, it was awesome, blah blah blah, and the casino's like, nah man, we don't want people sitting at the slot machines that aren't putting money in them. That's where we get our money from. So anyway, slight digression, but that's something that I had to explain multiple times to bands who thought they were doing such a great job because all these people were coming to see him, and I had to let them know there's a different viewpoint here.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so take me. So we've done your Alive agency, Gobbo Takes.
Mm-hmm.
We're now sitting in the midst of a global pandemic.
Yep.
No venues are open. Shows are canceled or postponed months from now. Yep. I actually saw and really appreciated a couple of the go-go bands in DC streaming live the last couple of days or the last week and a half.
Yep.
I didn't catch it myself, but apparently some other national artists are starting to do that.
Yep.
From your perspective, and so I'm new to YouTube. I mean, I've always used YouTube as a platform to investigate and learn stuff, or watch a historic concert that maybe I went to, or something of the sort. Are the artists possibly missing? I know they're streaming now, but what would you probably put in place so that they could actually monetize what they're doing online as well? I know a lot of them do it, but from your experience, is it something that not only the bands in DC, but bands all around the world, local bands, your artists per se, platforms like YouTube and even Facebook allow you, once you get to a certain amount of subscribers and followers and views, that you can now start adding that, ad programming to it. Is that something you're looking towards? I know you had mentioned you're working on some other domain stuff too.
Yeah, well, so I was looking at trying to do, because I do a lot of work with City Winery. I booked a lot of shows, pretty much every go-go band that's played there, with the exception of Chuck Brown Band, Belladonna, and Rare Essence.
For everyone, because there's people all around the world. That City Winery's in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah, that's the D.C. one. Yep, absolutely, yeah. So I booked pretty much every go-go band that's played there except for those three. Every go-go. Oh, and Proper Utensils. I'm sorry, I didn't book Proper Utensils either. Okay. But Backyard, What Band? It had Junkyard coming up. That's canceled now, unfortunately. Multiple bands. So what I was working on was trying to get City Winery to let us use their venue to do that. But unfortunately, because of, I don't know if you saw, but UCB, the police shut UCB down the other day from doing their live stream because there was more than 10 people. I
didn't see it, but I heard something occurred. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the problem, is that most of the bands have more than 10 people in the band. So once you put the band on the stage and add a video guy and a sound guy and maybe a manager or something or whoever, you're over the limit. So unfortunately, that's not going to happen right now. But there are multiple platforms that you could do it on. The thing, and I'm certainly not an expert, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. The only thing that makes me nervous about YouTube is that you have to have really a lot of followers. A lot of views, and be
Yep.
able to run ads to even make peanuts off of it.
Yep.
But for bands, there are multiple other platforms. There's one that I was going to use called Stage It. They've been around for a long time, like over 10 years.
Okay.
But they're not. It's mainly just like people, playing their acoustic guitar in front of their laptop, and people tip them or buy a ticket or whatever. But they've also had, they have like Jason Mraz, and they've had other major artists do stuff on there, and they're really getting hot right now, and they've actually increased their percentage that goes to the band while they're doing this. But basically, you buy tickets, and it can sell out, and you could set a certain amount of tickets that you can buy. The one thing that's slightly confusing is you don't buy a $5 ticket to see this particular show. You buy a certain amount of what they call notes, and then you use those notes to buy. And the reason they do that is because of the credit card processing fees, because some of the shows they allow you to pay what you want, or they allow you to do it for free or whatever. So you don't want to charge a 3% credit card fee on a 50-cent ticket. So that's why they make you buy a certain amount of notes, and then you use those notes to buy tickets or whatever. I did also just post yesterday that Twitch, which is really famous for people live streaming and subscription services for people live streaming video games, also has a music portion too, and it seems to be gaining a lot of steam. Twitch is a much bigger platform than Stage It, but just for a different demographic. But it seems like they're really ramping up and putting some juice into their music side right now, so they could be a really big platform to look to as well. But I will say, I know it's been frustrating. You and I were talking, about some of the frustration we have about, the audio and the cameras being turned to the side and stuff like that. And while that is my knee-jerk reaction, to be like, man, can you guys get it together? We also have to remember that, like, this is a new thing. Like, it's not like these guys have been doing it a long time, and they're doing it for free. They're asking for donations, but it's not like they're doing. So what I would say is maybe we just look at this as like the test run of everybody sort of trying to get it together and figure out the technical aspects, because it's not the same technical aspects that they're used to. And then once you get it sort of dialed in, then maybe you move over to one of these other platforms. I would say that if I were doing it, I might consider, and I haven't thought through all of the process, but I might consider relegating the stream to one platform, because what I'm seeing is a lot of people, they got the Instagram live and the Facebook live and then this live and then that live. And I understand you're trying to, make it feasible for all of your fans to see. But that's where the YouTube thing comes in, which I sort of agree with you, is that everybody can go on YouTube. You can just do it that way. But it's also difficult because people have built up their fan base on Facebook and Instagram, and just asking your Facebook and Instagram fans to go to YouTube, it creates that extra step, which means you're going to lose people in the process. But to your point, I do think it makes sense for a lot of the issue with Gobbo becoming a larger phenomenon is people being able to experience it live. And granted, there is no comparison. There's no way that you can do any kind of live stream or video or anything that is ever going to give you the essence of what Gobbo is in a live setting. However, if Gobbo bands were able to take the extra time and put in the extra effort to make it as close as you possibly can, to make sure that mix is great, and that you're not just getting your audio from the camera feed, that you're getting it from the board, which is being mixed by one of the guys that knows how to mix this stuff for real. And it could really help to expand the genre at this time because people have time on their hands, and why not check out a live Gobbo band, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've said it before. I might have mentioned it to you. I think one of the most real things about being able to go live is that people are able to experience as much as they can in the raw form. So I would suggest it to the bands. I don't know if they do it, but like even just like set up 3 cameras at your practice and just be real. Have your conversations. You're still laughing and drinking and carrying on. Like people would love to sit there and watch that stuff. I mean, obviously not record your next hit and throw it out in public, but in a sense, I think for the last 15 years, people were addicted to what was the MTV program where they were all living in the same apartment?
Real World.
Real World, right?
Yeah.
So that was the onset of the reality TV stuff. And now it's getting even more raw because people are bringing folks like you and I right now into your home. I mean, we're having a legitimate conversation that people want to know about. You know, what is Malachi planning to do that working in an industry that now is pretty much obsolete until we get rid of this pandemic?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's the question, if you were asking the question right there, one of the things I am doing is taking on website clients again. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I have done it a lot and I'm fairly good at it. And so
would they contact you through those 2 platforms, or would you prefer them to contact you a different way?
To be honest with you, I hadn't even really thought of it because it wasn't like I mean, for my agency and for Gobbo Takes, those are well thought out businesses that I have, over time have set up to have correspondence. This is obviously just a knee-jerk reaction to an emergency situation, so I don't have like a website set up for that. They can reach me through Messenger on Facebook, or I don't know if I can just give you, am I able to type anything in here? Or can I type it in the chat, like type my email?
Yeah, put it in the chat. That's fine. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just do that. I'll just do that in case anybody wants to.
Yeah.
To do that. And then I'm also, taking this time to brush up on some get current with digital marketing because obviously I use it all the time and I'm familiar with it, but things change every 5 minutes, and I didn't even know this StreamYard thing existed. I'm glad you sent it to me because I love it. It's awesome. And I may think about using it to do some stuff as well, so just trying to always stay up on the trends because things change all the time. And so I'm just taking any courses I can and, just Google Digital Garage certification and, just working on that kind of stuff while things slow down. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess it's the real times that we're in, and it's only been, a short period of time, week and a half, but I think most small business / entrepreneurs are kind of scratching their head a little bit, trying to say, well, what, aside from, a potentially deadly pandemic that is now here in the United States, as of, I think it was this morning, New York City is completely shut down.
Yep.
I know you guys in LA are any stores still open? I mean, aside from grocery stores, but are any
stores and drive-through restaurants, but pretty much nothing else. Yeah, it's the entire California. He's basically set up put a stay inside notice. So I mean, you could still, I don't know. I mean, I drove yesterday to go to the store, and I took a little jog down Huntington Beach. We're in Long Beach, so went down to Huntington Beach, and I was just sort of surprised and slightly irritated. There's probably 500-600 people on the beach, and like people surfing, and just like it was just a normal day. And I mean, I guess to a certain extent, like, yeah, maybe you're 6 feet away from each other. I get, but I'm just like, man, just like. Yeah. take it easy. Like, just like, even if it's wrong, like, even if it's all, it's not a hoax. Clearly it's not a hoax, but even if it was, just pretend like it isn't. Let's get this over with. Like, the longer you are stubborn and be like, oh, well, this is
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I'm saying? Just the longer it's going to take for us to get out of it, just irritating to me.
No, I mean, I said it, I don't live in fear, but I'm also not trying to be stupid about anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the irritating part to me, I understand people do need to go get the necessities. They do need to maybe check on an elderly relative, but quite honestly, you don't even want to be coming in contact with an elderly relative.
Exactly.
So you might want to go to the store and leave it on their front porch, And I think, I mean, I'm in the same position. My parents, went to their house down in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia because that's their way of quarantining themselves aside from living in the district. They're not going to be forced to walk to the store where they probably could potentially expose themselves. They're down in the middle of the country, And my mother told me this morning, Sunday morning, this small little town in Southwest Virginia, they have their first case. So they're not living in fear either. But what I was getting to is that take responsibility for it. I've been practicing, basically, I've been living as if I am infected. And the reason why is because none of us can get tested if we don't have the symptoms.
Exactly. And you see a lot of people that are, testing positive don't have the symptoms. So just pretend you are infected, and then we'll get over it quicker, Yeah,
I mean, that's a great point. Is if for this short period of time we each take our own due diligence to cut the curve down, to control it and condense it, it'll be over faster. But we keep running all over the place, we're just cross-contaminating.
Exactly. And it really sort of speaks to, not to get too like deep or political, but it speaks to the sort of selfishness that we have as Americans. It's just, well, I'm entitled to do what I want. And yes, you are, but you're part of a greater whole,
Right.
You're not the only one that matters. Like, we all matter. So just act like it, or even just pretend like you act like it, It's just, I just don't even understand. Like, just don't do stupid stuff. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so look, we've been on here an hour. Is there anything that you're looking?
Sorry.
No, is there anything that you're looking to in this short period of time that you've had to even think about it, to maybe share with other people or suggest to other people that are maybe in the same position as you?
Well, I mean, I would feel a little bit funny suggesting anybody to do anything, because not like I have it figured out. You know what I mean? But I will say, for musicians, if there are any musicians that are affected, I mean, I feel, this hurts me a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm a small business, and I'm operating on very low margins, and I know it looks like a fancy place behind me, but this is a studio apartment. So it's not like I'm balling in some Hollywood mansion or something like that. We're in a studio apartment in Long Beach. There are multiple, there's one out of here, actually, a guy that I know, he doesn't run it, but he works for this organization called sweetrelief.org. And they are, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
They offer assistance. I mean, even way before this issue, they offer assistance to musicians who don't have, good insurance or whatever. They have health problems later on in life. A lot. There aren't really 401ks for touring musicians and stuff like that. So the way they work it, they take direct donations, but they also when there are actually concerts going on, they partner with artists and promoters and add $1 to the ticket price, and then they take that dollar and put it in the relief fund, and then musicians that are in trouble can, or that have health issues or whatever, can apply for those funds. So that's one. Music Cares is another one. I think it's just musiccares.com. They are the Grammys, sort of relief arm.
Okay.
And so those are two that I would look for musicians. I reached out to your guy at, for businesses. What's his name? Chris.
For the business financing or temporary lines of credit for business. And actually, I'll put a link in this video description as well. When people replay it, they'll have that. But basically, what Malachi's talking about is we have a mutual business gentleman that has kind of a simple way for the small business person that's already set up in a business. It's whether a corporation or a LLC, but he has access to lenders that have lines of credit for businesses. And Malachi and I were chatting last week, and I was like, give him a call, fill out the app. The safest thing you could probably do as a small business owner now is to at least get qualified and approved for the line of credit, because moving forward, we don't know, and at least that gives us some security, knowing that you have 20 grand, 50 grand as a set aside to potentially use going forward. I mean, like the charity stuff you were just mentioning, it might not be needed today, but it's going to take the music industry by itself a long time to recover.
Well, that's one thing that I do want to point out too, is that with the live industry specifically, we're in a little bit, like, my wife's a hairstylist, right? So the salon goes down. So she's in the same position I am. But the difference between her situation and my situation, not that hers is better, but and this applies to other businesses as well. As soon as bans are lifted, et cetera, and salons open back up, people are making their appointments that day to come in and get their hair done, right? With the live industry, we're booking 3, 6, 9 months out. Mm-hmm. So you can't just pop up a show and say, hey, we got a show tomorrow. There's time. You need to set things up with lead time to adequately promote them so people know that they're happening. You know what I mean? So for whatever implications this has for other industries, restaurants, whatever, the implications for the live music industry are significantly more severe, because the length of time that it takes to recoup and start getting back into that swing are 3 to 6 to 9 months longer than anybody else. So we're definitely looking at a tough situation here. Yeah.
So I'll definitely put the link to that funding in the video description. So anybody who's watching or replays this, at least feel that you have a little bit of security moving forward.
Yeah.
So like you were just saying, though, maybe for me in the print business, when that green light goes off and they announce a date that we're releasing the public businesses to come back and open up, we'll probably be busy as could be, because everyone's gonna be doing a promotion, a special, a whatever.
Yep.
It's just, how long can you wait that out?
Yep.
And then with the concert stuff, your revenue's not generated not just when the tickets go on sale. You gotta pay for everything first. So that's the front end of the ticket sale.
Yep.
And so you're 6 to 9 months easily on something.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough. It's going to be tough. I mean, Gobbo will be, I think, less impacted because there's already a tight time window. Band, like I was saying earlier, like bands play every week in the same place. But when you're talking about a touring act, that's a whole different ball game. So it's
on flights and hotels and staging companies going weeks in front of each other to have the next venue, and then the logistics is going to be the slowest thing, I'm sure. It's basically, in a sense, it's like starting over.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's exactly what it is. And it's going to be tough because everybody's cash flow is tight because, not only are you, like when shows are being canceled, because part of what happens is in a lot of these circumstances, some of these circumstances, venues and promoters and bands are trying to postpone as opposed to cancel. Because what happens is if you cancel, and the reason for the cancellation is because the city shut it down, that triggers what they call a force majeure clause, which means you have to give the deposit back. Yeah. So that has a trickle down effect. If the artist and the agency has to give the deposit back, that's less that they have, and especially if they've already bought their flights and stuff out of it, and they might not be able to get their flights back, or whatever. It's just a one thing leads to another domino effect of,
Yeah, I mean, even if they were to get a credit on the flight, that credit might be limited to you have to use it between this time and this time.
Yep.
And it might not be when that concert or whatever is rescheduled.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a tough situation. I've got, an artist that was doing a festival in Mexico and it got canceled, and that's the situation we're in right now is they want their deposit back, and technically they're entitled to it, but he's already bought his flights and he's trying to, because he doesn't have the deposit, he used the deposit money for the flights. So, it's just a difficult situation right now. So, it's just multiple layers to how fucked up it is, for lack of a better term.
No, we'd go crazy sitting here thinking about it all day, but that's kind of the point why I wanted you to come on and kind of share with people that a lot of us are in the same boat. I mean, there's no check hitting my bank account every other Friday. It's just we make what we make and try to keep as much as possible, but right now we have no scope as to when the check is coming.
Yep. Yeah, that's the scariest part. But that is, although it really is a bad thing that everybody's in this situation, it is almost sort of a consolation to know that you're not alone and you're not the only person that's in a fucked up situation, and that everybody's going through it. And there's somebody started a Facebook group of agents and promoters that are, everybody's saying, hey, what are you doing about the, so it's sort of, these are not people that normally would get together in a Facebook group and talk about their business because everybody's sort of in their own silo. But now it's sort of, so there are potentially some benefits out of this. Hopefully we'll all just become a little nicer to each other and a little bit more cognizant of the issues that, that other people are going through. And, and I read a meme the other day, again, not to get political, but somebody saying, if you've got 28 boxes of pasta and, 40 bottles of hand sanitizer in your house and, you're freaking out about this, then never again should you look down on somebody that's running away from a country where there's war and famine and gangs and shit like that, because you're going to do what you got to do to protect your kids too. So stop looking down your nose. And stop looking down your nose at people that bag up groceries at the grocery store, because they're the ones out there risking their lives for us now.
Exactly. I felt that way, and not to go off subject, but I was in Ghana in West Africa in like 2001. So my brother was in the Peace Corps, and we went there to visit. And to lie and say the culture shock doesn't hit you, there's no way. If you're coming from the West and you go to a place like Ghana, West Africa, I'm not talking about in Accra or Kumasi, not in the cities, but if you drive off not far, people who live in an apartment building here that actually have a bathroom in their apartment are kings.
Yep.
So, we're dealing with this epidemic. Yes, we're stuck at home. Yes, we can't do all these things. No, we don't know when we're going to make our next dollar. But fortunate for us that I think we got a community that does get it. I mean, I have a guy actually coming on live this Friday. He's a local real estate developer.
Mhm.
He's in the midst of like 3 or 4 projects. Nobody's going to work. He can't go to the supply house because they're not open.
Mhm.
And, we're going to just sit there and go through it. And like, what do you do next? What is your plan?
Yeah, I mean, we were about to sell our house back home right now too, and now it's just sort of sitting there done, and we're like, we don't really know what to do right now. So yeah.
I heard the governor of New York make the statement about, this is not a stay-at-home per se order, and that's where he's saying, I'm not ordering you to stay in your house, but you need to be cautious and aware of what's going on. Don't go out if you don't need to. And he put in a 90-day abatement on landlords not being able to evict.
Yep.
And so I feel for the landlord when I heard that, right? But then I was like, well, who's going to be looking for an apartment to rent? Like this, like everything kind of just stopped. So you can evict them, but who's going to go running down the street looking to rent your apartment?
Right, victim. Yeah, who's gonna fill that spot? Yeah. Someone else that got evicted that can't pay their rent either. So what? Yeah, I mean, it's just the interdependency of our economy and businesses, and really just comes down to, hey, this whole thing is based upon the interdependency of people, and so start treating other people like people, and we'll be a lot better off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, that's all I got. But man, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing your story.
Thanks,
and
man.
Hopefully, when the rest of the world watches the two of us, you'll be back in business, and they'll be jumping on your website, adding their shows, and inquiring about an artist booking or who knows what.
Nice. I appreciate it, man. Well, thanks for having me. This is great.
Cool, man. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.